Hey, Michael.
Raz,
How you doing?
I'm great. We're back. It's been a while.
It's been a while. And we now
Happy holidays.
in our favorite room, I think.
Yes.
And today, it's MySpace.
Yes.
Cybersecurity.
I'm going to keep my mouth shut.
Don't worry, you can speak. It's good to challenge anytime. I'm very excited to have Paul Hadjy, one of the top-notch cybersecurity guys in this region, which is very, very unique. As the one that come from Israel, where everybody is like, most of the people or whatever the people I know is doing cyber. Over here, when you meet someone like you, it's very special, and I'm very happy that you agree to come today. Just gonna give a quick brief. So Paul, and correct me if I'm wrong, and stop me. Feel free. Paul is the VP of APAC for Cybersecurity Services at Bitdefender. He used to be the CEO and co-founder of Horangi that was acquired by Bitdefender. One of the specialties with Harangi was KIM, which is a cloud infrastructure entitlement management, meaning giving the privilege for the cloud identities, how to walk in the cloud, how to navigate. This is for one way. And the second thing that Bitdefender was acquiring is the CSPM, which is the Cloud Security Posture Management, meaning showing the visibility of how your posture on your cloud look like, understand which actionable items or things that you need to remediate, and go get them. Yeah, and this is what Bitdefender, I think they saw. Paul also is originally from the US. We have experience in companies like Palantir and Grab, where you had like interesting roles over there. We're going to speak about it later on. And beside that, I also heard that you have an MBA, Information Security.
Is that new?
No, I had it, actually did it right after college.
Oh, got it. In the US?
Yeah, in the US. I did the same school I got my undergrad in.
Oh, nice.
So it's going to be interesting today. Yes. And we're going to start with the first thing in what keep you stay here in Singapore or build your company over here. Tell us more about it.
Cool. Yeah, so I guess like why I've been in Singapore. I've been in Singapore since 2012, so almost 12 years. And originally the story like kind of came from when I was working at Palantir. So at Palantir, I spent a lot of the time working with the U.S. intelligence community and military. And I was actually in Afghanistan. I was there for a year around 2012, like 2011 through 2012. And while I was there, I met some Singaporean armed forces guys who were interested in utilizing Palantir. So ended up coming to Singapore to do some demonstrations for them. And then like ended up working with other organizations in Singapore, and subsequently started working with the local team here to build out both government, but also our sort of commercial business. And this was like when Palantir was just one product, which was the Gotham product, but now they have plenty more. And obviously most people have heard of it at this point. I think then it was not as big as it is now, for sure.
It's huge now. I was going to say, do you still have some shares?
Yeah, a bit. Yeah, I started in like 2009. So at that point, Palantir was like less than 100 people. So I was lucky and fortunate enough to be able to ride the growth that they had.
What is it that you do for them if you're on site?
Yeah.
Meaning, like, it's a software product. Why are you in Afghanistan? Because I think that might be, like, I was curious about that.
Sure. Like, I think from Palantir perspective, there's this role called forward deployed engineer. So what that means is the engineers are actually supporting the end customer and solving whatever problem they have with the product. So with Palantir, in those days, again, I haven't worked there since 2016, so some of the stuff may be a bit outdated, but I still watch and read up. But yeah, I think like the original product that I was mostly supporting was called Gotham, which essentially was a data solution that allowed you to do analysis on large amounts of data. But part of using the platform is that you had to like categorize that data. So we use what's called an ontology, which essentially is just like the characterization of tables in a database. And then, we would do that with the end customer to help them integrate their data. And then that's when the platform actually became really useful, was like, okay, Army organization, you have like 100 different data sources. Like, let's categorize all this into some sort of database nomenclature, or maybe it's different database nomenclatures, because some types of data are stored better in certain databases. Some are relational, some are like sort of just like rows and numbers. But yeah, and then putting it in the platform and making it easy for the typical intelligence analysts to look at it.
And since they're in the field needing this, you're kind of in there with them
Yeah, I mean, in Afghanistan, like the connection is kind of an issue. So we came up with a lot of different solutions to kind of solve that problem in terms of like how we would do things. Like this technology, I think is open. It's called Nexus Peering, but essentially, like the problem is like the databases, although heavily distributed, are not necessarily in sync.
Yeah.
So like in certain places, like if I say this guy is doing this thing, but you say he's doing something else, and we're in disparate locations, like the conflicts will show up within the database. And then like, the technology would help like sort of distribute the data, identify conflicts, allow someone who could make that decision to make a decision or list multiple sort of variants of it. But that was very tough to do because of the limited connectivity. So we did things like put the data on a CD, take it to the CD. And of course it's not a...
Jump in the Humvee, deliver the goods.
Yeah, I mean, literally that's what I did. Yeah, so I would like give a laptop with the data on it, and it had like a smaller version of Palantir that they could connect like once a week and then download the data for their specific area and then utilize it for what they needed to.
And back in the day, cloud wasn't that in a usage, especially in Afghanistan, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's a different network as well, so it's not like the regular internet. And so I think for sure it wasn't in use. There was, of course, like servers and stuff, but like it was just, being run out of different places, and it was quite slow. And then if you have connectivity at all, because there's different levels of bases, right? So I was mostly at the bigger ones, but the further you go down in the chain of like getting to the special forces guys, it's like 10 of them running around with a laptop, right? So it's not like they're going to have a real connectivity or anything really, right?
So you're designing for that. And then from there you come to Singapore.
Yeah, and then came to Singapore. I had been doing that specific stuff for quite a while, and then came to Singapore mostly working with commercial customers, and then like also was in Korea, I was in New Zealand as well, all starting around that like 2012 timeframe. But it was always a kind of a base here. I traveled a ton, so a lot of time in Korea, almost 6 months there, about 6-7 months.
Hence the Nico intersection.
Yes,
of he's living there, working for LG.
Yes, at that time at Nikolai, he was running Seoul Tech Society, which is like this group he set up, and I met him through that. We were trying to like recruit people, and then I was also in India for a while in Chennai, supporting a large financial institution customer in Singapore.
Wow.
So yeah, like I think, and there we did like more like AML and cyber stuff, but all that, like you can imagine like being able to do like import a lot of data, do analysis on it easily, I think is really the use case for Palantir that matters, right? We never really had our own data. It was always someone else's, which I think is part of the value, but we made it easy to like search and analyze, right? And ask questions, which I mean, now I think there's a lot of other solutions that do things, and I'm sure Palantir has advanced a lot more than what I just described, but like it just like at that time it was kind of like quite easy because you would go into a bank and they'll have like 100 different databases, none of them talk to each other, and like like different teams manage them, and you can't even like get the data, right? You have to like fill out a request, then you get the data, and then you get it like in a CSV, and like what do you do as like an analyst, right? But Palantir kind of bridging the gaps, doing the negotiation to get the data, and maybe sometimes we don't get all of it, or we just get certain pieces that they're comfortable sharing with other teams, like those types of things, but it still enables a lot of interaction that wasn't easy before. So yeah, like that was there's a technical element of that, of doing data integration, which I did, but the more difficult part in a lot of ways was like talking to stakeholders and saying like, hey, like, this guy could actually use your data for his job. They're like, oh, I don't want to share. Like, and you're like, yeah, but like, we're all trying to solve the same problem. And then like, okay, what if you share like, maybe it's just like the date and the time, and then if he wants anything else, then like he or she, like he'll call you, right? And we can put that notification in the application to say like, this is so-and-so's data. If you need more, contact them. And then like that also enables a lot of collaboration because like, okay, maybe you're not allowed to see that data unless you have a specific request, which is, there's a lot of regulations in banking and of course government as well. And like that, it also enables that, right? To enable that conversation to happen. Because before, like just not sharing your data doesn't really enable that conversation to happen, right?
It sounds like the challenges was more with services, with the customer, operating them, assisting them to enable the technology. If I'm getting it right.
Yeah. I mean, very large part of the job, the technical implementation side. Like generally we would have somewhat of a team, right? So it wouldn't be just me doing it. And a lot of great people I work with there have gone to do great things. But yeah, like, I mean, a large part of it was like negotiation, like helping people understand like why this is important, and then like selling them on the shared value that we could get out of it, right? Because like it also looks for the data owner as well. It makes them more valuable because like more people are asking for the data.
Yeah, I shared
so
and look,
more support.
It's helping. So if you take this Palantir experience and you're bouncing around the region, you've been schooled from America, I think some people's port of call would have been, I should go do a startup which I know with talking to Nico, and there's that episode that you guys were like, we should, and here's these ideas. But they would have probably said, go back to America.
Yeah.
Because I can raise funds probably better. It's a bigger TAM, maybe. It's kind of the nucleus for cybersecurity, but you stayed put here. What brought you to that decision? And was that a hard decision?
Yeah, I think, all those things you said are probably right. Like just in terms of like, if you look at the numbers, like numbers wise, I think it does make sense. But in our case, I think we were quite interested in serving what we felt like was an underserved market. Originally, I think in the early stages, the company we were trying to build was kind of like a cybersecurity company that could solve like Asia cybersecurity problems, right? Because there is different stuff. Like we're operating in different countries, running to like different operating systems. In Harangi's case, we supported other clouds besides just the American ones. Those types of things that I think were different from us and sort of America-focused vendor that then comes back to Asia, which I think is mainly our competition these days. Is a lot of American.
Like they circle the globe and then they eventually come here. You're like, let's start here.
Because it's usually the playbook is the priority number 3.
Yeah. If you're lucky.
Come here. If you're lucky.
I think like my pitch always to like CTOs or CISOs was like, hey, look, like if you look at like our customer base in terms of revenue, it's like 95% is Asia, right? Which is good for you because it means like our focus will be on serving this market. Yeah. But then you look at any US company that is doing cyber, like maybe if the biggest will have like 10% be Asia, and that's like really, really good, right? Like a lot of them are like less than 5, right? Yeah. So I think, that's a good selling point, I think, for CTOs, CISOs that wanted to use a sort of local product that was willing to support them and like, adhere to local regulations, like not only Singapore, which I think most people do now, but like Indonesia and Thailand and a lot of the other regions that we all operate in, because not very many companies just focus on Singapore, for example.
Yeah, great point.
Yeah. But I think just in the Asia thing, like we were interested in building it out here, of course, growing globally. When we started, we were kind of actually doing kind of endpoint originally. We were doing an IR analyzer, incident response analyzer. And then like kind of like as we iterated, we went to like a network infrastructure scanner, then a source code scanner, and then to Warden, or now called CSPM Plus, is a part of Bitdefender. What kind of came out of us working with end customers who were starting to adopt cloud, struggling to sort of do the security side of things and compliance. And then we built it. One of our teammates, Bosi, built it as like a script. And then the customers like loving it. And then we were like, okay, well, let's see if we can productize this into something. Yeah.
What was your pitch to the first customers?
I think, Horangi had a services business. Now Bitdefender has the services business, which I still run. We were working with a customer on compliance in the cloud on the services side and saw that like a lot of these checks are automatable, right? And like, a lot of the value that's bringing out to the customers, identifying the areas where they don't comply with certain regulations. And you're like essentially looking at rules and then seeing how they apply to a specific regulation, which we of course had the expertise from the services team. And then decided to build a product around solving that. And now the product has grown quite a lot. So you mentioned CIM, we have other things that are launched in the platform. It's all integrated into Bitdefender's full suite now. So basically we have a full suite of products for sort of your traditional infrastructure, like on your laptops and phones, but also for, of course, the cloud now, right? And it all talks, right? Which I think is ultimately where a lot of companies are going, which is like making sure everything talks together. Because my belief and problem that Palantir solves is actually like making that happen. And that I think is actually the hardest problem in software, was like making disparate systems work together. And of course, the people element is something not to shake a stick at as well.
Yeah, fair.
Tell us, we did like a fast forward, but how long was it, like since the moment you kind of incorporate till the moment you've been acquired? How many years?
Yeah, so we started in 2016, and like many companies, we started like while I was still working. So I think we started officially like incorporated in May 2016. But like I think we were working on the idea from probably 2015, even like January 2016. And then like in terms of the acquisition, it was August 2023. So it's about 8 years. Yeah, almost 8 years.
The reason I'm asking that, because sometimes people look and say, oh wow, this company has been acquired, so happy for them, but they are not realize the pain. The pain. Share with us few point in time when you said, wow, what do I do to myself?
I think in our case, we had a lot of different shareholders, and like getting them all aligned on the acquisition is not always easy. And like you as the founder are like the middle person there. and like people don't agree on things as they wouldn't, and there's a lot of money involved. So
investors, we mean VCs?
Yeah, some VCs,
angels,
some angels. Yeah. I think like that was difficult, managing the buyer, the investors, managing like the team as well, right? Making sure that no one's like freaking out too much. Like I think all those things are quite difficult.
And how did you do that? You're having to go around and arbitrate all of that?
Yeah, I think because like Bitdefender is a Romanian company, most of our investors were in Singapore. Of course, a lot of the teams in Singapore, but also Indonesia. So yeah, like I was mostly here kind of doing a lot of work over the phone. In the US also, because like the guy that runs acquisitions at Bitdefender is based in the US, Matt Winter, great guy. Thanks, Matt.
We love you. We love you.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a really great guy. But yeah, I think like all that was kind of like difficult too. It was just like managing different time zones. Of course, like I would like work during the day on the Singapore stuff, and then at night, like Matt and the Romanian team, I guess like 3 or 4 p.m. our
click
time.
into the US time zone,
and then
now
like
you're
a
working
whole
on the
different
deal.
thing is coming up. So yeah, I think it was pretty hectic, and like managing sleep and stress and stuff throughout that. Like I think the stress part is quite difficult. So like we were talking about this before that we turned the mics on, but like I didn't drink throughout like most of that period, and I think that helped quite a bit in terms of managing the stress. Just because like it's when you sleep better, I think it's easier to deal with stress, at least for me, right? Like I think
is there anything you learn from that? Because like you hear sometimes of acquisitions that get derailed during due diligence, or even an investor that doesn't come along for the ride. You even heard sometimes what I call the bad paperwork stories that end up caught. Like, did you learn anything through that you were like, oh, I wish I had done something different, or a lesson from this, what is largely like a fairly complex process? Because I think a lot of startup founders who've never done this probably think, oh, someone comes to you and they want to buy you and there's a price, and but it's a protracted, complex thing that can actually fall apart and not go through, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I think like ultimately, I think the thing that I underestimated and what I would advise any founder on is like it's more about the people than anything else, right? Like, yeah, of course there's numbers involved, but like ultimately if like the people don't see eye to eye, then like nothing will get done. So I think that's the real learning for me, is like the harder parts was like getting everyone sort of agreed and kind of like focused on getting it done, and like being all in the same direction. Like those types of things was harder than the number side of things, and like doing the analysis, doing the due diligence. That part was tough, but maybe that's just my case as well. But yeah, like I think just in our case, like it was a 2-year process. So we met Bitdefender quite early on, and originally we were discussing sort of, you know, them utilizing our product, our Warden, now CSPM Plus. And then like that turned into like, oh, like, hey, like we were interested in kind of investing, and then talking to our shareholders, then became much more of an acquisition sort of talk. And then that kind of like, then that went on and went through that process, and then kind of like ended. So it was almost 2 years from like meeting to like then talking about a partnership to like, hey, like we're interested to directly invest, to like, hey, like we'd actually like to acquire you, and like the investors kind of like agreed to.
Which I think there's a good lesson that we talked about that with Craig, right? Where a lot of times you don't realize this customer or partnership person sometimes grows into an investor / acquirer, even if that wasn't the intent.
Yeah.
And that could happen, and people should keep their kind of wits and niceties about them, because it can happen, right? Even if that wasn't, I'm sure when you first talking to them, you never thought I'm getting acquired by them, right?
Yeah, I think like someone once told me this, and I don't remember who, but if they're listening, credit goes to you.
Take credit for it.
Yeah, I think like any good CEO is always like kind of having a backup plan, and I think the best backup plan for CEOs is like having good partners, right? So having companies that you should partner with, either from a go-to-market perspective or a product perspective, that can be potential acquirers, right? Because like you never know what's going to happen. Like anyone who's been on this journey knows that, like, you know, you get punched in the face a lot, and usually you don't see it coming as well. So I think, like having those backup plans of like deep partnerships, good relationships with those partners and things like that, I think are key. And like, it may not be acquisition or love at first sight, but like keeping the relationship going, keeping like updates happening, those types of things I think are important in terms of getting the actual deal done. And like, I'll tell you, the personal relationships, like, again, like is what got it done, right? Like, yeah, for sure.
Interesting.
I'm trying to take you to the day after the acquisition. It's done. You sign the paper.
We're talking post-signing.
Post-signing. Yeah. You have the paper. Tell us, how did you feel? What happened on that, like the day after?
Yeah.
How'd it look like?
Yeah, so I think I think maybe to explain a little bit for everyone who hasn't been through this, like there's multiple signings as well. So like you sign first you sign like an LOI, which is like, hey, like we want to do this, but there's a couple things we want to look at, and then like if those things don't work, like we might not move forward. Then there's like, hey, we signed the deal, and that's like the full legal document that everyone signs. But then there's like a bunch of stuff to do after that, which actually gets to closing, which is like share transfers. It's like transferring of IP, like shutting down entities if for whatever reason, entities don't make sense, like documentation being handed over in like a certain process.
Access to code.
Yeah. And we're a security company, right? So the transfer of the code is like super like important, right? And you have to go through a bunch of checks to make sure that it's done correctly. Everyone checks everything, like, because you don't want to transfer the code until you've gotten the sort of proceeds to the shareholders, right? Because like that's the whole value, right? So it's not like super simple. It's not like I sign and everything's done, right? Yeah. So I'll tell you like the two moments, and both I think are similar in terms of feeling. So like on June 23rd, subsequently my birthday, funny enough, like we signed all the papers, and like that was like the kind of major signing, I think. And then like there was like mostly relief. Like I don't think there was like,
okay, it's done.
like thank God it just didn't.
We can cut my birthday cake now.
Yeah, like left of whiskey on the rocks, something nice.
I think I just like slept a little bit. I think it wasn't even like celebration at all. I did have a dinner or two like after that, like not that same day, like later on. But yeah, mostly it was like just relief that like, hey, like this thing didn't blow up, because like very easy for them to blow up. I think other people also underestimate that. Yeah. And yeah, like that, the relief I think was quite good. Of course, there was some excitement, but then like after the full closing, which is like when money is transferred and things like that, that I think was also pretty much relief. Like again, like none of the things that like were transferred got broken, because those can also blow up a deal. You'll see it sometimes, although rare, like where the deal is signed, they publicly announce it, and then like something happens to where the deal doesn't close, right? So a lot of that, like that happened with Microsoft, I think, when one of their acquisitions, because the UK governing body kind of blocked it, right? The anti-compete the monopoly commission or whatever, right? Yep. So like that can happen too, right? So it's not really done. So yeah, like, and then like of course once the deal actually closed, which was like August 1st, 2023, still just like kind of like more relief. And then the real work started, which was like integrating the companies, right? Which is like, Harangi was not small, but it wasn't big. It's like 120 plus people at the time. So, and Bitdefender was around 2,000. So it's like, more than 5% of the company. So like integrating all that. Also, of course, they didn't have anyone in Asia really, like a couple people, but not a lot. So like integrating all that, working with Romania and the US to kind of do that, I think was a challenge. But yeah, we got it all done. And I would say like, it went very well. Surprisingly, because I've heard from other people like it can go very bad. And yeah, like I think I've enjoyed it.
So that's kind of a question that a lot of people don't talk about, but I bring this up because sometimes when I'm looking at angel investing, which you do, we'll talk about that. Like you'll come across, good people with what I would like to call bad paperwork or non-existent paperwork, where it's like, oh yeah, I'll take your money. Well, where's the doc? How much was the document process through your startup affect this getting a transaction done?
Yeah.
And maybe it didn't because you did it all right, but I imagine there's some learnings there, because I always tell people like you're trying to build a company friendly system that allows this company to have value that somebody will want to acquire or go buy. And then paperwork becomes this almost maniacal piece of the puzzle, even if when you're sitting there with two people at a table that you kind of think, well, it's not that big of a deal. It's like, it becomes like a huge deal. I'm wondering, did that have any factor or anything you learned from that? Because
I think in our case, like we had like, all the VCs we work with were pretty fair. I think like there's terms that I would change in the future, but like I don't think there's anything that was
Which
like,
one? You need to tell us.
Yeah, I think like shareholder thresholds is like one that's like tough, right? Like if you have a certain percentage and you can veto a deal, like that is tough, right? And like that can be used in a negotiation, right?
That is just block.
Yeah, I mean like as you would like in their shoes, right? Like why wouldn't you?
Sorry, I don't want to sell.
Yeah, or you don't want to sell because I want to make 10-20% more, right? Yeah. Like I see it from both perspectives, and like to be fair, like they gotta make money too, right? Like that's why we're all here. But like me as the founder, like would I have that threshold be higher, or would I do something like what's happening in the US where like everyone has common equity and like those types of things that are happening? Would I get away with it? I don't know. But like I think like it's worth knowing.
Yeah, it's all different once you've done it once. Right?
Yeah, it's worth knowing like what the different terms are that can buy you. I think like, yeah, those can be a difficulty with the thresholds, and that matters like both for like board reserve matters and just regular board matters, and what is in those categories, because what you can put in those thresholds and what you can remove from them, I think helps you in doing what you want. But to be fair, like they're also protecting themselves, because like they may have founders that aren't doing things that are fair for everybody, right?
Yeah,
and I think
there are bad apples.
Yeah, on both sides, I think that's true. Yeah. I think again, like I think we were pretty fortunate though. Like there was nothing.
But I would add that like probably from day one, there's been lawyers like from the moment you did angel deals to setting up. There's been lawyers and paperwork, right?
Yeah, I think in Singapore at the time though, lawyers in 2016 weren't necessarily like
startup friendly.
Yeah, or nor did they know about a lot of the terms or the gotchas, right? Because like I mean, there still hasn't been that many acquisitions, right? If you compare it to the US. So yeah, like I think like yes, there were lawyers, but like did they actually know all of the gotchas? I don't think so, but I'm sure a lot of them have learned now, and there's a lot more stuff that's happened, and VCs as well. Like I'm sure they've gotten better at protecting themselves and doing what's right for the company. I think also like, one thing that people don't think is that important, which is like employment contracts for the founders.
Yes.
It's super tricky. Like we didn't have this thankfully, but like if like a founder leaves, like what is the IP, who holds the IP, like all these things like really matter. And like, especially for investors.
So not just to be clear to people, because I've talked about it before, they get this mixed up. It's not just the shareholding docs and it's actually that the founder has an employment contract, which is actually different than shareholding, because some people act like because I have my shares and because I'm a co-founder, I'm covered. But actually you're still an employee. And if you don't have an employment agreement, or let's say never had thought about it, in the event, what I always tell people, you need paperwork in the event things go
wrong,
sideways, right? Or wrong. But I always find some people don't think that a founder should have an employment agreement, but they should, right?
Yeah, I mean, like I think it's fair. Like I mean, again, like I think depending on your shareholder agreement, you can definitely get fired. And like as a shareholder, you don't have any recourse really, right? You can sue, but like you're suing yourself. So like I think like it's quite tricky. And I think like also things that are really important is like if there's multiple founders, like IP rights, right? Because like if you don't have an employment contract, like you as a shareholder of the company, like who owns the IP and in what
I'm going to go rebuild this.
Yes. Can I give an example? I just heard recently.
Yeah.
There was a startup cyber, surprise, in Israel. There were 4 co-founders, and they put a guardrail in their founders agreement that if one of them leave after less than a year, he cannot take any IP from the company, which means the IP belongs to the entity, not to him, even though he was, let's say, 10 months over there. And these founders agreements are super important.
Yeah. And like, I mean, I wouldn't invest in a company if they didn't have that, right? Because like 4 founders, like irregardless of like their best friends, like,
but I think you only
get running a company. You don't know what's going to happen.
That from experience though, right? Like, and thankfully the ecosystem has evolved, like you said, because it was much different then. But I always find when I've done a few workshops where it's kind of like an AMA at like an angel group or even VCs talking to founders, and I'll kind of go off on this tangent and I'm like, hey, and let me ask you some odd ones. Like, do you have an employment agreement? Do you have share thresholds? Do you have clawbacks? And they look at you like, why would you need all those things? And I'm like, because the guy might leave and you need the cap table back, or you need to like, and I always tell people like the thing I've been kind of clicking on is because you get in these arguments where people talk about founder friendly, VC friendly, or investor. And I always tell people, honestly, at the end of the day, it should be company friendly, because it's the company that carries on in the event a founder leaves or when you get bought. It's just like, Harangi will live forever inside a Bitdefender with the sense that maybe you're not there. Of course, the documents create that holding thing that allows that to happen. And I always tell people, like, you may not like this answer, but company friendly paperwork is actually what you build companies on, not founder friendly, investor friendly.
Yeah, and I'm a big proponent of doing like that and making it fair for both parties, right? Because ultimately, like investors are putting their money or someone else's money that they're beholden to into the business. But yeah, like it doesn't always work out that way as well. But like, yeah, I think the legal contract stuff is really important. And like, yeah, employment agreements I think are super important, especially in like when IP, in most companies, IP is
I bet you
portion of value, but like.
I would ask every startup founder when you watch this episode to ask yourself, do I have an employment agreement? And I bet you more than half do not in this part of the world.
Tomorrow it's a good day.
Start.
Tomorrow it's a good day.
There's templates.
Let me give you a segue.
Yeah.
So,
all right.
Would you do another startup in the future?
I think I might potentially at some point, but like I think now like I'm pretty happy where I'm at. Like I'm doing a lot of interesting stuff with Bitdefender and like helping grow the business and you know like our product, our services team is growing quite a lot. It doesn't mean I'm like not doing stuff like in angel investing or like my wife has a real estate company, so I help her with that quite a lot. And I always loved real estate and never really did anything with it other than some houses I have in the US. Like I think that's like something I'm passionate about on my personal aspect. But I think like with Bitdefender, like the mission is like the same, right? Like Harangi's mission was kind of like building out, growing Asia and growing that for like an underserved market in terms of like SME mid-market and then also growing into the enterprise. And I think Bitdefender has been doing that for 24 years, 25 years now, which is something they've come very good at. And they've built an awesome business distributing their product through channels. And like we're distributing CSPM Plus, Harangi's old product, through channels as well as our services, which is driving a lot of growth for us. And like in Asia, we had a lot of great partners, although not any Bitdefender employees. But you know now, of course, with the acquisition, we have 150 Bitdefender employees in APAC and are growing that business. And you know that's an important part of our strategy long term is to grow the Asia business. And that's something I'm passionate about it as well, and like doing business in countries that Harangi didn't get to do business in. And then I mean for me, like I'm also learning quite a lot about channel sales, which I think is quite interesting. Harangi had some, but Bitdefender is basically 100% channel, so that I think is super interesting and a very different way to go to market, which I'm learning a lot about.
Yeah, and I was saying the market's not getting any smaller.
Yeah,
especially even in cyber.
Yeah, I think, I mean, it's not going to get smaller. Yeah. Maybe there'll be like new products, but like it's definitely going to continue growing. It's the most popular way to do crime now. So,
believe it or not, it took us a while to say AI.
Yeah, we're going there.
We're going there.
Well, you mentioned new products. And I think one of the things we like to ask people is, because there's so much junk talk around AI, you know, building, whatever. Let's put that aside. It is a real tool, right? And it's how do you think it's going to affect cyber outside of yes, people use AI to do more hacking, and we'll use AI to defend more things. What do you think is the bigger picture there for you as a product person?
Yeah, I think like I mean the hardest problem in cyber is like data to noise ratio and like signal to noise ratio, and I mean like I think it's going to help us enhance and like kind of get more accurate at that. So and like Palantir, of course, like focus on this. We called it like the human computer symbiosis. Humans should be good at what humans are good at and like focus on that, and computers should be good at what they're good at. And then in my belief, that's really like humans are quite good at like predicting and sort of analyzing other humans. I think computers are not as good at that. They may become good at that, but what they're really good at is like identifying areas that are useful for us to look at, right? And I think like that's what ChatGPT does. Like it helps us get through all the mess, but like we're asking the questions, right? It doesn't know what we want. We have to tell it what we want, and then it gives us the information. And I think that's going to be super powerful in cyber, especially like in sort of sophisticated situations where you need stuff fast. Like that is really the area, and that's going to matter a lot in like SOC teams, managed detection and response teams, and that's like where Bitdefender is integrating as well. And I think the cool thing about Bitdefender, and a lot of people don't know this, is that like we have like more endpoints deployed anywhere because like we have a consumer business, which a lot of people may or may not know about, which is a very big business. So we sell endpoints to consumers to protect their home laptops. We have the B2B business, of course, which is distributed globally, 170 plus countries where it exists. And then we also have an OEM business. So a lot of products out there use our engine, which I think is, how we get to be on very many endpoints and see a lot of data, which I really believe in the AI thing. The data is going to be what's going to be making the best companies, right? So especially in a specific space. So that part I'm pretty excited about, and seeing what we can do to continue to thwart attacks and help our customers. And like, I think the cool thing about Bitdefender too is like, we're not only enterprise. We support a lot of SMEs and consumers, which is like different from most other cyber companies.
So one of your specialties is providing services, and you leverage it. You understand what's the customer pain, how to approach him, what's going to be the benefit with the service that you are providing him. And currently now it's with Bitdefender. And when I'm taking AI in place, some of the buzzwords right now, which is workforce, in not just enforcement, but agentic, meaning gonna create, and this is what they're talking about. I'm not talking about the future. I already heard about startups that working on that, is to have these agents that gonna augment, I don't want to say replace, gonna augment some of the services SOC persons can be done. Do you believe that it's something can work as we expected, or?
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't see why not, right? Like, I mean, certain actions, right? Like, I think where it gets tricky is what I was talking about before, is like when there's like a real human adversary inside of your environment. I think that's when like a human is 100% needed, because like AI can't, like, at least yet, can't really like fight against like human ingenuity. Like, we've all watched Terminator, right? Like, I think it's a real thing. But yeah, like, I totally believe that like if we have 10 SOC analysts today, this is not Bitdefender specific. Do we need 10 5 years from now? Probably not, right? Like those analysts will have stepped up. They'll probably be more senior and be looking at different things than what they were looking at 5 years ago, right? And I believe like AI and other tools will enable them to be focused on what's important, which is likely going to be active intrusions that are probably not like AI generated, right? It's going to be more human threat actor types of things that are a bit more sophisticated and like changing and moving all the time. So I think that's the reality on that front. But yeah, like, will we need less people? Probably. Will they be doing different things? Definitely, 100% they'll be doing different things. So yeah, like, that's my belief. It's just like, all technology has kind of, made certain parts of an organization or parts of a function like obsolete over time. I don't think that AI is any different. It's just we'll be focused on different things, and maybe there'll be less people doing it, but that is that's innovation. Unfortunately, I don't know. It depends on how you look at it.
How far do you think it's going to take that we're going to see an adversary AI confronting Defender AI, and a human watching?
I'm sure that's already happening at some level. Like, what they're actually doing may be fairly basic, but like I can imagine that like there is AI on both sides, like defending and attacking against each other. And also, like, I think the beautiful thing about AI is that it can learn. So it's like learning and then adjusting. But whose model is better? Who has more resources? Who has better data? Like, all these things are going to matter. And who has better people training the model? I think all those things are going to determine like who's going to sort of win the proverbial battle. And yeah, I mean, there's like, of course, like crime, but then there's also like nation state stuff. There's like all these different things that I think are going to be important depending on what your organization does.
Yeah, I'm thinking, and it's something that we ask when we bring in someone from cybersecurity space. Is that our conversation is with lots of words, and some of the people that see the show and like, what are they talking about? But I want to bring them something and say, what do you need to do in this era of AI to protect your space as, I don't want to say moms and pops, but it can be my friend, which is actually doing real estate.
Interesting. I think the basic stuff is still important. I think a lot of people, especially like individuals that aren't in the space, don't do is like just two-factor authentication. I think like just thwarts most everything. It's a little bit painful sometimes, but like it really just makes it a lot more difficult for an attacker to break into your accounts or whatever you're trying to protect. And it's free in most accounts and organizations, and like I truly believe it stops most of the attacks. And if it's crime, like it's a crime, like almost always it's a crime of opportunity. They're not targeting you specifically unless you're like famous or super rich. So I think like from that aspect, me neither. No. But like I think like that alone helps you kind of reduce the risk. And there's the old adage, it's like you don't have to run faster than the bear, you have to run faster than the guy next to you, right? And,
or just to buy Nike. Faster, or Hoka, or Asics. I'm not doing any.
Yeah, definitely. I think like it's just about being like, it's like putting the alarm in your house, right? Like in Singapore as well, like unlocking your door, like those types of things like thwart a lot of crime, right?
Yeah,
rotate your secrets, the basics.
Yeah, I mean, for running AWS, there's like a bunch more stuff to do. But like 2FA, again, I think
complex.
like I still like, I mean, having looked at a lot of AWS
the amount
accounts,
of people that don't have it on.
yeah, it's just crazy,
shocking,
right? Especially when they're like, their crown jewels are in there, right?
Just active. That's it.
Yeah.
Done.
I think that will reduce your risk by a very good amount.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to the startup space because I know when we had a chance to do it together, mentoring startups, giving them contribute back to the ecosystem. And you do a few advisory roles for startups. And I want to go to the point where, because I think you saw a few startups in the past few years.
Yep.
Where do you say, hey, especially in the early stage, what are the pitfalls that these co-founders are walking and trying to catch them before they're falling there? What's the most common thing that you see with early stage?
Yeah, I mean, like we talked about this a little bit before. It was like one of the things, like the documentation, like it's not very fun, but like it's essential. Like employment contracts, of course, for the founders, like I believe that's important, specifically for the IP situation. Like who owns the IP, where does it go? Like all those important discussions to have at the beginning with the founders, and then like writing it down and like making some sort of contract, right? Yeah, and then like employment contracts for the employees. Because like if something bad happens and you don't have anything down, like you can't really do much. Those things are all important. And again, like as you were saying, like it doesn't really come up to most people, right? They don't think about it.
I think everybody thinks they have good intentions, right? Or that, hey, we're doing a fun startup. Like we won't have these problems, or we're going to be co-founders forever. But something can happen, right?
And that's probably true at that point in time, right?
Yeah.
Like, but like, I don't know, shit happens, right? Stuff happens. Like things break. Like people get tired. Like
I mean, how many times you see about these co-founders that have broken up and then they go and start competing things? If you actually had some of that IP paperwork, it'd be like, sorry, you can't, right?
Yeah, and I don't think, especially like the time to have that conversation is in the good time. It's not the time to have that conversation once everything's falling apart, right? Like you want to have that conversation at the beginning when everyone has the same intention. And then you write it down, because like if you have that like after the fact of like, oh, like he's like 50% in, 50% out. Like,
as I tell people, it's like, oh, I should have bought, you just got an fender bender and I should buy insurance. Yeah. You have to have the insurance before the fender bender, right?
Yeah, and I mean, even with insurance, like when I was in my 20s, like I didn't really care much, but now I'm like in my 30s and
we're gonna get there. We're gonna get to your 20s. So besides paperwork, this is a good point. There is something from product, GTM, something that you usually see.
Yeah, I think like rapid expansion, generally those are mistakes, like especially at the very early stage. Like if you can't find 10 customers in Singapore, like there's probably a problem with the product or business, right? If you can't find 100 in Singapore, there's probably still a problem, depending on, unless you're doing like $100K, $1 million deals. So yeah, like those types of things I see a lot. It's like, we want to expand. It's like, but why? Yeah, like, I mean, if a customer inquires to you from overseas, you can serve them from Singapore. There's a lot of different ways to do that. Most regional companies will sign contracts in Singapore these days. Yeah, so I think that's that. And then the other thing that I would definitely do if I ever started a company, I advise all founders to do is like, even before you like start the company, you have an idea, you have a product, like go talk to 10 people in the space and just ask them to like write you a letter that says like, we're going to buy this product for whatever the amount you want to sell your product for, and sign it, right? There's no commitment off that letter. Like obviously it's not a contract, but it's just like, get them to go through like the mental commitment and process of signing a letter that says like, hey, if you solve this problem, I will pay you. That helps you in a couple of ways. One, it helps you understand like whether someone's just being nice or whether they're like willing to take an extra step, right? And of course, like it doesn't actually mean anything, but like if they're willing to take that extra step, like there's a real interest there. And like how willing are they to do that? Like is it like just do it right there, or you send them a letter and they sign it, or is it like, oh, it's dragging out for 3 months and like whatnot?
And you get some sense that they're not
still,
so
most
willing.
of the, based on my experience, most of the B2B, let's say the ICP, the CISO, code name, Chief Information Security Officer, it's going to be very tough for him to commit, even though he think that my idea is going to assist him so well in terms of risk, in terms of, legal, in terms of NDA. But
I think the letter is like besides all that stuff, right? Because like that, you're right. That is a whole other journey. It's just like intent. Like you're demonstrating intent that I think this problem is worth $10,000 to me or $100,000, whatever the number is. And then like the benefit of you being able to do this, one, you have some level of confidence that a certain number of people are potentially going to buy this. And then like when you go raise money, like I think it helps a lot because it's like, okay, this guy or girl has said and like written it down that they're willing to like do this, right? Which is like, in my opinion, is like a whole nother level of commitment versus like just saying it, right? Or
It's a conviction.
yeah, right. And like that I think is important. And like, you know, they're your buyer that you're supposed to be selling to.
You're building the sales pattern, because you know how some people it's easy to get in a room and dream these things up and whip out Figma, and you start getting good at it. It's another thing to be able to like convince somebody
Which is fun,
to
by
get
the
to
way.
that letter point.
Yeah.
That's the selling side, which not everybody's good at, right? And
Yeah. And like, yeah, I mean, ultimately, if you can't convince them, like maybe it's you, maybe it's the product, like it could be, maybe they don't have budget to solve this problem. Maybe the problem's not big enough for them, right?
Yeah.
And like, yeah, like whatever you think that problem is worth to them, like, are they assigning the same level of value? And then like, yeah, like how can I find 10 of these people to do it? And then like, then the problem becomes, how can I find 100, 1,000? Like, which
By
is a
the
great
way,
problem.
recommendation on that specific note, it's a book, The Mom Test.
the mother book.
The Mom Test, yeah.
Mm.
The Mom Test, one of the books that actually speaks about that.
Oh, really? Okay.
And I recommend to any, let's say, entrepreneur.
Little red book. It's not
Yeah.
very thick.
Mm.
127 pages.
It's a good book.
Done.
Cool. Yeah, my favorite startup book is The Hard Thing About Hard Things.
All hard things about hard things.
Man,
It's good.
Yeah, it is. It's a great book. It makes me laugh.
What's his name? Brett? That's,
Is it Andreessen Horowitz?
yeah, it's
I think
Andreessen Horowitz.
Wow.
The
Very,
partner.
very minor guy.
Yeah.
Anderson
Well, when he
Horowitz.
wrote the book, he wasn't as famous.
No,
but
it wasn't. It was when he was doing that HP
Yeah,
thing
yeah.
that he sold, right?
Yeah.
It was before
Anderson
A16Z.
Horowitz,
Yeah, and you know, yeah,
That's a good
Firefox
one.
as well.
So
yeah.
we, in your current role and then before as a CEO, one of the things we like to ask people, and it kind of goes with the name here, is like generalists or specialists?
Yeah.
What did you learn about yourself, and what do you think you were as you were a CEO of Harangi?
Yeah. I mean, I think in the early days, like I was more of a specialist and then became a generalist. And like, I think that's probably the right way to do it, is like you want someone who's like very good at one or two specific things, but they also have to be able to adapt to whatever the current problem of the business is, which is not always what they're good at. So like, I think there's, in my case, like I would say the skill that like helped me a lot through Palantir was not my technical skills. I would say like I can do it and I'm like, okay, and maybe better than some people, but like I wasn't the best for sure. But I was able to like sort of work with people, convince them of like why the problem was important, convince them of like why the other stakeholders need to be involved, why like all this would be better together, essentially. So that was kind of like my skill that I felt like I was good at. And yeah, and we had a great CTO kind of like helped us on the technical side. So yeah, I think it's like being a specialist, in one specific area, but also being able to be a generalist. Because I think it's very hard to just be a specialist and run a company unless it's like super, super deep tech. Not talking like cybersecurity deep tech. I'm talking like, you know, building like really difficult AI models and things like, or hardware maybe.
Semiconductor or something.
Yeah, right. Like I don't know anything about it, but yes, yeah.
Well, just the fact that like you can get in this umbrella, because we've had these talks, because we used to chat when you were at when I was at AWS, when they Veeam and stuff, and then you like there's sales, and then you come to this like, oh, and then there's channel sales, which is like a whole new beast that even a specialist or even a good salesperson literally may know nothing about the channel sales, right? Like it's almost like another thing you had to learn, right?
Yeah, it is. It's quite different, right? People are different. Like objectives of everyone is somewhat different, right? You're working with a lot of like partners, right? Which their objectives also may be different, right? So I think it is very different, a different challenge, and it's quite interesting. And I think it potentially is a faster way to scale your business too.
Yeah, it's big.
Yeah.
I always tell everybody when I'm helping around like Series A, Series B, I'm like, what's your channel strategy? Like that should be the big, if you're in B2B, like a big strategy. And some people will be like, what does that mean exactly? And I'm like, it means a majority of your revenue should come from indirect, right? And through a channel, and it takes a different muscle to build that kind of a business, right?
Yeah, and like partnerships are like another thing that can be very useful as well, which are like kind of channel sales, not really. Yeah. So yeah, like I think I'm quite interested in learning quite a lot about that at Bitdefender, and something that they're extremely good at.
Yeah. Nice. Awesome.
There are not too many people. I started with that. I will end it with that did actually sold their cybersecurity company. I think you're one of the only ones that I know. I need to check more, but this is very unique. And we have our routine that we do in every show, and we're gonna ask you some questions.
Okay.
You just said something about being 20. But what would you tell your 20 years old if you had the chance to do that?
Oof. I think some of the things I regret, I guess, it's like in my case, like I play golf now, and I also played when I was in high school, but like I stopped playing after that. I shouldn't have stopped. Something I enjoy, and I think it's great for business and meeting people, and like, you know, it's also something that you can work on that like can help take your mind off of some of the stresses of doing business, but also adds to your network, which I think is important. So that's one thing I regret. I mean, there's so many decisions in the business that I think I could have done better, although I think the outcome was good. Okay, I guess. So I think, yeah. Well, what else would I tell myself when I'm 20? Yeah.
Go to Afghanistan.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think all those things were like different experiences, and like I enjoyed them. Could they have worked out differently? For sure. Some have been more positive, some maybe more negative. But yeah, I think in general, most of the stuff that I've done, I think has worked out mostly okay, but which I feel lucky about. But yeah, plenty of like tactical decisions that I've made terribly and like would love to reverse, but haven't. Yeah.
See, this is the difference from, we always ask it.
Yeah.
But this is the difference from entrepreneur, because most of the people say you should have taken more risk. But entrepreneur, like you, took the risk.
He said I should golf more.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the frustrating thing about golf was like stopping then picking it back up and then like losing all that like potential learning and skill building, that part of stuff. But yeah, like I don't think, could I have taken more risk? Probably. Like, should I have?
Hard to say.
Yeah, hard to say.
Hard to say.
Yeah. Could I have made different decisions? Yes. And had better outcomes potentially. But, you know, at the time, you often don't know what you're doing. But
I think it turned out all right.
Yeah. It turned out okay.
You're here.
Yeah.
So what do you do to stay healthy? Like, you know, whether that's mental or physical. And I'm sure there's been a journey of the hardcore startup years and all of that to where you are today. Like,
yeah, always gone to the gym pretty like regularly. I always played sports, like different kinds of sports, like baseball, golf, wrestled as well. So always been pretty active and go to the gym a couple of times a week, if not every day sometimes. So I think that part like helps me with clarity, and like we were talking about this a bit with golf, but like also with yourself, it's like getting stronger, getting better at something, like improving like whatever skill you're keen on improving. And for me, like sometimes that's like my strength, my body, like making sure that I'm, you know, I think one of the best ways to fight aging is going to the gym. So that's like something.
That's what they say.
Yeah, something I believe in. Yeah, so like that's like one thing I definitely do. Golf. Also, well, I just came back from skiing in Japan, so that was pretty fun and something I've done also all my life, but not as consistently as I want. Yeah, and then like I think on the personal side, it's like I listen to a lot of podcasts, this one included. Yeah, I also like some other like US-based ones. Like I listen to some real estate podcasts, some SaaStr, of course, 20VC as well. I quite like. So yeah, like I think that's kind of like the learning I prefer. I do read books, but I wouldn't say I read like a ton. And I think
we're like not reading enough.
Yeah, I definitely don't read enough, but I do listen to a lot of stuff. And like I think like the reason I like Hard Thing About Hard Things is it doesn't feel like you're reading a book.
Yeah, it
feels like a bunch of short stories, and that's like kind of the more interaction and he feels like he's talking to you instead of like and telling you about his experience. So it feels like a podcast when you're reading it, which is why I like that book a lot.
That's a good book.
And also like just listening to that and be like, oh yeah, my experience sucked at certain times, but like he also like his was maybe worse, or probably worse. So that made me feel a little better sometimes as well. Yeah,
that's good.
Yeah, we asked about books, but we went. Yeah,
we done it.
Is there another book that you think, or TV show, or something that you watched recently?
I think The Psychology of Money is a good book as well. It talks about like
Morgan Housel, right?
Yeah, it talks about there's two different types of people that are good at making it and people that are good at keeping it. And it's an interesting book, and just like walking through a bunch of different stories around like that. And like all of us will have a strength in one of those areas, but very few people have a strength in both. So it's always important to build the strength in whichever one you're weaker at. That one I like a lot. And then I guess TV shows. I've been watching Landman recently, which is pretty good. It's crass.
Taylor Sheridan.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't realize that's Yellowstone.
Yeah, Yellowstone. It's on Paramount Plus.
Paramount. He did a big Paramount deal.
Okay. Yeah.
He's also like, a lot of people don't know the Sicario.
Yep.
That's Taylor Sheridan, right?
Yeah.
And then the other thing, is he cameoed in Landman?
He does cameo in there.
Yeah, he's in every show. So if you watch like Yellowstone, he's the cowboy rounding thing. And in another show he's in a movie, at a bar, he's just sitting at the bar, and the main character starts talking to him. And if you look like it's Taylor Sheridan, he's always
Okay, I will check it out.
He's a super interesting dude. He's like, and he really is a cowboy. He has a huge ranch out in Montana or something.
Yeah. Yeah, and Landman's about like the oil trade in Texas. And then, of course, Yellowstone, most people know, I think.
Yeah, I love these shows. I
also love it as well. Yeah.
The modern Western kind of like.
Yeah, and I like Billions also. Like I like the
Billions.
Yeah. And
I have my X Capital sweater I wear at work. Everybody always asks about it.
Succession is another good one. I think it's quite interesting.
Yeah, we can see the archetype here.
Yeah,
yes.
Definitely you can see.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I think we got to roll. Thanks so much for doing this.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for having me.
We learned a lot.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.